Race 1 of round 1 at Adelaide. We have Kim starting 7th, having failed to qualify after crashing on his outlap. Simo in 6th, debuting his new team, Jerk Motorsport, for 2013. Luke alongside him in 5th was 4/10ths quicker. Christek missed out on 3rd spot by only 7/100ths to Rogers. And the front row saw Trigger on pole nudging out Tim by 2/10ths with a pole time of 1 minute 20.552. Shock with the quick reflexes got the jump off the line and darted past Luke. Tim also found traction at the green light and jumped to P1 before the chicane. Kim looked to have Simon covered for turn 4 but decided against the move and Luke pounced on his hesitation. As Manta and Trigger squabbled in the early laps, Tim was putting in the quickest lap times and opened up a comfortable lead. The lead would soon vanish after a mistake on the final corner put the Razorback car in the wall, suffering suspension damage to the front left. Rogers looked like he had the speed on Trigger in the middle laps of the race, but the D-Force car held position well. Nothing separated the top 3 positions by lap 8, but behind them the field had really opened up due to a number of slides and broken splitters requiring pit stops. Tim's damaged suspension made him vulnerable in the right-hand corners, and the pressure was starting to mount from behind. Tim's spin on the last corner of lap 8 dropped him to 3rd, but he was still in the hunt as Trigger resumed the lead. Lap 9 and Rogers carried speed onto the straight and got a run on Trigger. The cars were level by the first braking marker, and with both cars confused as to who would yield, Trigger ended up in the wall, but came out holding on to first place. Tim pits on lap 10, with Luke running 9 seconds behind him. Tyre wear was becoming an issue. Trigger also started sliding from the rear on lap 11. Lap 13 and Manta pits from 2nd, trying to undercut Trigger. At this time, Luke started pumping in the lap times, closing in on Tim, who had resumed the lead during the pit stop phase of the race. Manta comes out from the pits into the lead ahead of Tim. Trigger decides to stay out and runs wide on tyres which seem to be struggling. Lap 14 and a scary moment for Simon as his car pivots towards the wall. Trigger pulls out this spectacular drift, having stayed out for yet another lap on his tyres. Lap 15 and Trigger pits. Luke also stopping on this lap. Lap 16 and Manta retakes the lead after all the cars have finished pitting. Trigger gets back into second, and TC, despite having stopped earlier, doesn't quite manage to pass Trigger in the pits. Pete moves past Luke to go to fourth. Luke and Simon close in on each other after the pit phase, with Kim in amongst the action, despite being a lap down. Kim does a good job of staying out of the fight under blue flags. At this point, Simon is catching Luke by half a second a lap, with the number of laps quickly counting down. Lap 17 and Pete pits from fourth. It had been a tough race for the Milwaukee team and was about to get tougher. They had some work ahead of them to turn it around in race 2. The race was all but winding down on lap 21. Simon had stopped catching Luke and was now falling behind at a rate when Luke spun at the hairpin, and amazingly the two avoided contact during their recovery. This left an interesting scrap between the two, which would go all the way to the last corner when another bizarre situation arose. It was a long 25 laps, and with the lead changing several times, it ended up with Rogers taking the first win of the season. Trigger worked hard for second place to start off his 2013 campaign, with Tim closing out the podium in third. Simon held off a charging Luke Guard for fourth, while Pete carried his scars across for sixth, finishing a lap down. A similarly bruised Shock came across the line a lap later.